Welcome to Horton Custom Welding, LLC, Athens, Texas, 60 by 100 by 18 steel building. We do our own concrete construction as well for all of our projects. This is a 5-inch thick concrete slab. We poured it early one morning. It pumped out really well. Everything went really smooth. We're going to put a light broom finish on here, because it's going to be exposed to the weather, no walls. So you notice there's no bolts. We don't bolt up our building. We do put embed plates, and we weld our columns to those plates directly. Those are being placed as the concrete was wet. We build them in-house. Typically they're 1/2 inch thick, 6 inch wide by however long it needs to be to accommodate the columns. In this particular case, I used some 3/4 by 18 Nelson studs. There were 5 of those per plate. So we feel like it's going to be pretty strong. Under each column, there was a 2 by 2 by 2 cubic pier that we dug to house the Nelson studs, but also give it some support as that pier tied into the cross footings. So we run a trowel machine across to knock down all the ridges. We let it sit for a little while longer and get the cure a little bit closer, and then we come back and we put our light broom finish on there. Again, we want it to be a light broom. We want them to be able to sweep and clean the floor pretty easily. We don't deal with snow conditions and ice very often down here in Texas, so it's not that big of an issue to get a real deep groove in our broom finish. But as you can see, there goes the broom. Wrapping up that finish, cleaning up all the tools, buttoning up all the details. And we come back the next day and remove our forms. Now this here was about a week later. We always let our concrete sit to get a good cure on it before we take our equipment on. So we're hanging our trusses. They're extra tall and they're all I-beam trusses on this build. And so they're a little bit more time consuming to install. While they're being installed, we've got a guy that is assembling our clear span trusses down at the end of the building. You can see occasionally the telehandler will stop hanging trusses and or hanging columns rather, and go stack trusses down there. We stack them all so they're identical as they go up. So they're all assembled the same exact pitch and everything. So once our end columns are up, we're going to have a center column under the peak. They will not be clear span, and we're going to install the end gable truss, which is a 2-piece truss. We assemble it in the air. Then we pick up our clear span truss, hold it up, get it level and plumb, weld it on each end, install an eave strut on each end, and 2 what we call rat runs, just to tie everything together, which are just 2 of our 8-inch purlins. And then we move on to our next truss. We do the same repeated process there as we will throughout the building. I've got 2 scissor lifts that both have mounted welding machines on each lift, and the leads run up the scissor mechanism up to the deck. We don't drag leads around, so it's really convenient when it comes to that. So there we are the next morning, hanging the 3rd clear span truss, both rat runs, both eave struts. There's our end wall truss. Once again, eave struts on each end, rat runs in the middle. And then we start laying out our purlins in the roof, and the scissor lifts come behind and make the connections from them to the clips on the trusses. It's basically the same as a bolt together building. However, the welds replace the function of the bolts. So there we are. We fill in as much as we can before the end of the day there. It really is not a big process. It's just a lot of parts. And you're working kind of high up in the air. And then on this particular job, it was kind of windy. So there we are. We're going through there and touching up all the welds with a red primer. We got a spray can that'll cover up those welds. We want everything to have that red primer on it. Because we do assemble our kits in-house. We fabricate them. And then we bring them to site. We're able to put it right up. That's the beauty of having our own concrete crew. We can control every aspect of the build pretty well. So the next morning we get back to site, and there we are installing our skirt purlins. I guess you could say girts. And as they're put on one side of the building, there's another crew that went over and started putting on the skirt sheet metal. And so we put on a bottom trim, and we use a PBR sheet metal. In this case, it happened to be ash gray in color. So this is about late in the morning. We start on this skirt, leave for lunch, come back, finish this skirt. And then what we're going to do is, as our sheet metal gets delivered, we order it as stagger cut. So we try not to have any waste. So we have to unstack the metal and then restack it to fit the order that we're going to install it on each gable. So we went ahead and did that, built 2 stacks. They cut up pretty quick. This building happened to be a 2-on-12 roof pitch, so we just measured and marked and cut them. Install that gable. That particular one happened to be right under that pile of dirt, so it was a little bit of a challenge. However, the one on the other end of the building is not as much so. So this is the 3rd day. We finish up that gable skirt, and we laid out our roof. While we're doing that, we lay it on our basket on our telehandler, and we get to installing the metal. So the guys on the basket are responsible for running the screws at the bottom of each sheet into that eave strut and handing the sheets up to the guys on the roof. It's a pretty simple process, and it's really pretty quick. It took like 2 hours to run that 3,000 square foot of roof on that half. So we're probably, 10 o'clock here. We went ahead to the other side, lined it out, and ran, a bay and a half worth of metal. Had lunch, and then came back, and we wrapped this roof up after lunch. So we just keep repeating the process. I run all my roof purlins between 4 and 5 feet, whatever's in equal spacing. We try to stay closer to the 4 feet mark. I'd like to have a lot of steel in the roof. So we wrapped up the day by putting that roof on. We come back the next day, and we use formed peak sheets. So that means we have to get our roof lined up really well. A little bit of a challenge, but I think it's worth it in the long run because we don't have any closures to deal with. We don't have any leaks. It's all a mechanical fit. And I just found that in the many years I've been doing this, mechanical fits last so much longer than sealants or closures or caulk or anything like that. If we can just have a good fit with our metal, we'll be good for pretty much ever, or the life of this building, you know what I mean? So we're done with that. I'm not the greatest cameraman. I failed to get footage of us installing our gutter and our rake. However, there's our finished building. It's kind of choppy. Again, not the greatest cameraman, but there we are. Gutters and downspouts all finished. Thank you so much for watching.